Welcome back to the Pit Wall Pod. Today we're diving into everything from the 2026 Australian Grand Prix, the race that kicked off the new Formula One season in style. From the moment the lights went out in Melbourne, the action didn't disappoint. We saw intense battles, bold strategy calls, and a few surprises that could shape that championship fight in the weeks ahead. In this episode, we'll break down the biggest moments from the race, talk about the standout drivers and teams, and look at what this result might mean for the rest of the season. So buckle up, because there's a lot to unpack from the season opener down under. The 2026 Formula One season is officially underway, and the first practice session in Melbourne has given us an early look at the competitive order. Ferrari came out strong in FP1, with Charles Leclerc setting the fastest time ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, making it a Ferrari 1-2 to start the weekend. Just behind them was champion world Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, showing that the fight at the front could already be very tight this season. The session had plenty of early drama as teams began their first real running with the brand new 2026 cars. Oscar Piastri had an early scare with a temporary power issue in the McLaren, while rookie Australian Lindblad caused a virtual safety car after stopping at the pit exit. There were also reliability concerns for several teams, including gearbox checks for Lando Norris and a power unit issue that kept Fernando Alonso out of the session entirely. As the track evolved and the soft tires started to appear, lap times improved quickly. Verstappen briefly went fastest late in the session, but Leclerc responded with a strong lap to secure P1 with a 1:20.267. Hamilton finished just under half a second behind his teammate, while Verstappen held on to third. Further down the order, Red Bull Isaac Hadjar impressed in fourth, and Lindblad also caught attention by finishing fifth. Meanwhile, teams like Mercedes, McLaren and Audi quietly worked through their run programs as they gathered crucial data for the new season. Overall, FP1 gave us an early hint that Ferrari could be a serious contender in 2026, but with plenty of reliability questions and teams still learning their new cars, there's a lot more to come as the weekend unfolds in Melbourne. The second practice session in Melbourne brought even more action, and this time it was the home crowd that had something to cheer about. Oscar Piastri topped the timesheets in FP2, putting a strong lap to lead the Mercedes pair of Kimi Antonelli and George Russell. Mercedes looked particularly competitive during the session. Antonelli briefly became the first driver of the weekend to break into the 1:19s, while Russell also showed impressive pace before Piastri ultimately reclaimed P1 with a 1:19.729. The Ferrari drivers were close behind, with Lewis Hamilton finishing fourth and Charles Leclerc rounding out the top five. But the session wasn't without its drama. Early on, Russell clipped the car of rookie Australian Lindblad in the pit lane, while Franco Colapinto slowed on track and forced Hamilton into evasive action. Both incidents were noted by the stewards for investigation after the session. There were also a few mechanical problems throughout the field. Max Verstappen stalled his Red Bull in the pit lane earlier in the session and later had a big snap of oversteer at turn 10. That sent him through the gravel and caused some floor damage. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez brought out a virtual safety car late in the session after stopping on track with a suspected hydraulic issue. Elsewhere, it was a difficult outing for Aston Martin, with Fernando Alonso only managing a slow installation lap before returning to the pits without setting a time, while teammate Lance Stroll struggled near the bottom of the order. When the checkered flag fell, Piastri held on to the fastest time of the day, giving the Australian fans a perfect end to Friday running, with Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull all showing flashes of pace. The battle heading into qualifying looks incredibly tight. The final practice session before qualifying in Melbourne was a dramatic one, especially for Mercedes. George Russell topped timesheets in FP3 with a strong lap of 1:19.053, but was mixed fortunes for the team after a heavy crash for his teammate Kimi Antonelli late in the session. The session actually started slightly late due to barrier repairs following an earlier Formula 3 incident, and it didn't take long before the first disruption arrived. Carlos Sainz suffered a stoppage near the pit entry in his Williams, bringing out a virtual safety car and eventually a red flag while the car was recovered. Once running resumed, the times began to tumble quickly as teams switched to soft tires for qualifying simulations. Ferrari looked competitive again, with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton both spending time at the top of the leaderboard, while home favourite Oscar Piastri also briefly took P1. However, the biggest moment of the session came in the final quarter when Antonelli lost control of the Mercedes at turn 2 after taking too much curb, sending the car into the barriers and bringing out another red flag. Thankfully, the Italian driver reported he was okay, but the team now faces a race against time to repair the car before qualifying. After the session resumed for the final few minutes, drivers rushed out for last-minute runs, but Russell's earlier lap remained unbeatable. He finished ahead of Hamilton in second and Leclerc in third, with Piastri fourth and Red Bull's Isaac Hadjar completing the top 5. With practice now complete, the teams will turn their attention to qualifying, where the pace between Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull looks incredibly close, heading into the first grid battle of the 2026 season. Qualifying in Melbourne delivered plenty of drama, but in the end it was total domination from Mercedes. George Russell stormed the pole position with an impressive lap of 1:18.581, leading a front row lockout for the team with teammate Kimi Antonelli finishing second. Russell looked unstoppable throughout the session, topping every segment of qualifying and showing that Mercedes might have a serious advantage heading into the opening race of the 2026 season. Antonelli's performance was also remarkable, especially considering the heavy crash he suffered earlier in FP3 before the team managed to repair the car in time. One of the biggest surprises of this session came from Red Bull newcomer Isaac Hadjar, who delivered a fantastic performance to qualify third in his first race weekend with the team. He'll start ahead of Ferrari Charles Leclerc and hometown favourite Oscar Piastri, who completed the top 5. It was a more difficult session for reigning world champion Lando Norris, who could only manage 6th place, while Ferrari Lewis Hamilton starts 7th. The Racing Bull pair of Liam Lawson and Antonelli and Lindblad impressed by reaching Q3, lining up 8th and 9th respectively. However, the biggest shock of the session involved defending champion four-time world champion Max Verstappen. The Red Bull driver crashed in Q1 after locking the rear axle under braking into turn 1, sending the car into the barrier and bringing out a red flag. While Verstappen was unharmed, the crash means he will start from near the back of the grid for the season opener. With Mercedes locking out the front row and several surprises throughout the grid, the stage is set for what could be a dramatic start for the 2026 Formula 1 season in Melbourne. The 2026 Formula 1 season started with a thrilling race in Melbourne, and in the end it was a perfect day for Mercedes. George Russell took victory after an intense battle with Ferrari earlier in the race, leading teammate Kimi Antonelli home for a dominant Mercedes 1-2 finish. The race became with immediate drama when Charles Leclerc made a brilliant launch from 4th on the grid to take the lead into turn 1. After the opening laps, he and Russell traded positions several times in a fierce fight for the lead, while Lewis Hamilton stayed close behind in 3rd. Strategy quickly became the key story of the race. A virtual safety car triggered by a retirement for Red Bull's Isaac Hadjar allowed both Mercedes drivers to pit early, while Ferrari decided to stay out and run longer. Another virtual safety car later in the race, caused by Cadillac driver Valtteri Bottas stopping on track again, shook up the strategy battle. When Ferrari finally made their pit stops, Russell and Antonelli regained track position at the front. The big question then became whether Mercedes could make their one-stop strategy work, as their tires were significantly older than those on Ferrari cars behind. In the end, the gamble paid off. Russell managed the tires perfectly and crossed the line almost 3 seconds ahead of Antonelli to secure his 6th career Formula One victory. Leclerc completed the podium in third, with Hamilton finishing fourth after closing in during the final laps. Further down the order, reigning champion Lando Norris finished fifth for McLaren, while Max Verstappen produced an impressive recovery drive from 20th on the grid to 6th place. There was also a standout debut for rookie Lindblad, who scored points in 8th place, while Audi celebrated a strong start to their works era, with Gabriel Bortoleto finishing 9th. However, it was a heartbreak for the Australian fans, as hometown hero Oscar Piastri never even made the start after spinning on his way to the grid and damaging his McLaren. So, after first race of the new era of Formula One regulations, Mercedes leaves Melbourne with maximum momentum, a race win, a 1-2 finish, and an early statement in 2026 championship battle. Wraps up an incredible opening weekend of the 2026 Formula One season at the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. From intense battles at the front between George Russell and Charles Leclerc, to Mercedes securing a dominant 1-2 finish with Kimi Antonelli, Melbourne definitely delivered an action-packed start to this new era of Formula One. But the season is only just getting started. The paddock now heads straight to the Chinese Grand Prix at the iconic Shanghai International Circuit, where the next race weekend will take place from March 13 to 15. With momentum on Mercedes' side and plenty of teams looking to bounce back, Shanghai could bring another big shake-up into the championship. If you enjoyed this episode and want more Formula One content every race week, make sure to follow along on all platforms. You can follow on Instagram at Empowered Paddock. Check out TikTok at Around the World in 24 Tracks. Subscribe on YouTube at Lights Out with Hanne, and listen to the podcast The Pitwall Pod on Spotify, so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to like, follow and share the podcast with your fellow F1 fans, so we can keep growing this community and bringing you race analysis, stories from the paddock and everything happening across the Formula One world. Thanks for listening, and until the next race weekend, lights out and away we go.